Hello, let us know if you can hear us.
Hello, Iowa neighbors.
Hey, I can hear you, Katie. I'm not sure I can hear anyone over there as of yet.
Same. Good to see you, Maya.
Nice seeing you too.
There you go. Can you hear us now?
Yes,
Yes.
loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Oh, no. We're just talking about the weather here tonight. It was hail. It was like 70 degrees, and hail in the afternoon and snow at night.
Oh, wow.
I mean, Katie's.
We just had a mud storm as well.
Yeah, my car was like that.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Maya's in a state with palm trees. Need I say more?
Yeah, I was just gonna brag about my weather,
Yeah,
but maybe I should.
yeah, Maya lives in Florida, so she's not in Jackson. So she's Katie's more of a Midwestern, but yeah. Although Maya does get to make a trip to Minneapolis.
At least we can do.
I don't like the homeowner. Episode in January, maybe.
She's got a nice cozy house there. It's very modern.
Maya, they like your house behind you there.
I was playing with the background and it's not that many options in Teams. So this is my fancy mansion.
Yeah,
Not that many options. I figure it's better than for all of you to see my office. So this will work.
It's all good, so. Wait just a couple of minutes. So I think we have some online, some in the room, so we'll just wait till.
I tried to take initiative one
People
time.
don't meander and.
Just very stuff.
Never have to.
It's on the phone, so-
Otherwise, I've never had a guy.
So I won't put anything.
I live in Fulton.
There.
And lots of times, I can get to all brands quicker than I should get to the.
I was gonna fill it, and she's like, we have to.
He's been fantastic. It's like some of this.
Oh, so not good.
She's had at least a number of days. You gotta stay there. She's like,
Wow. We were just talking.
So maybe with
I'm
another
not
year
gonna-
or something to develop. I could not work like that. Those conditions are.
It's tough.
We don't go as much.
I like.
Our kids will go.
They're frozen, you buy 6 frozen pizzas.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're just always mindful, they're so handy, just they're.
Yeah.
High energy. And
Yeah.
they're so.
Oh, there we go.
All I have to do is stay. It's studying for me.
Okay.
Yeah. We ready? It's 2 o'clock? All right. We will get started. I always want to start class on time, so. So welcome to, this is month 3 of our year-long sort of leadership sessions that we're doing with my friends at Grove Clinton here. So this one is especially interesting because first of all, this is just International Women's Month. So we wanted to talk about some sort of things with the title of this being developing a respectful and collaborative workplace for everyone. So I think we probably look, if we think about situations where, dynamics and gender dynamics have influenced how we interact in the workforce, and how I think what's key is how do organizations respond to those sort of events to try to drive organizational success. So what do we do to try to foster a respectful and collaborative workplace for everybody? So my firm belief in life is none of us is as smart as all of us. So Katie and Maja heard me say that like 310,000 times. So I think how do we try to engage in that sort of event? So with that being said, so I'm really fortunate to have our 2 guest speakers today. As I read their bios, I could take an hour to do that, but I'll try to make it short here. But as we think about their professional comments, they're better people. So, and that, which is even the better part of who they are. So first of all is Dr. Maja Zelihic. She's has a beautiful background there on her screen there. And she was recently appointed as Dean of the School of Business, Technology, and Healthcare Administration at Capella. She's also a Forbes contributor, Fulbright specialist, global researcher, author, and TEDx speaker. She additionally brings extensive accreditation consulting experience, developing and implementing quality strategies to meet external standards, managing quality audits and accreditations, and overseeing course observations to enhance teaching quality and student learning experience. She's done a lot with international partnerships, global e-learning development, course creation. She's additionally a Fulbright specialist, professor, global researcher. She's completed 3 Fulbright projects in Zambia and Uganda, and serves as a country co-investigator for the Global Research Project, contributing valuable insights into cultural practices, leadership's ideas, and interpersonal trust. Her expertise in e-learning and online education spans Africa, the Caribbean, Middle East, Europe, and North America. Her scholarly work includes over 20 peer-reviewed journal articles and co-authorship of the Power Perception and the Perception Power. So, Maja, thank you for being here today from beautiful Jacksonville, Florida.
Thank you, Charlie. Hello, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, so Dr. Katie Thiry is an assistant dean and professor in the Forbes School of Business and Technology, committed to transforming the higher education landscape. She acquires new tools and strategies to generate equitable outcomes for all students through continuous study and earn the ensuring equitable student success in higher education certification to the Harvard Graduate School of Education to gain a deeper understanding of student success. She recently received the distinction of Fulbright Specialist and esteemed recognition awarded by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs and World Learning. Co-founder of the Center for Women's Leadership, established by the Forbes School of Business and Technology, and the CWO mentoring program to support the center's vision in a world in which all women are empowered as leaders. Recognized expert HR field, bringing the SHRM certified, senior certified professional talent acquisition specialty credential and workplace investigation specialty credential from the Society of Human Resource Management. So he's also a certified performance technologist through the International Society for Performance Improvement, senior professional in human resources and a certified professional in learning. And so thank you both for being here. And I think they're, one thing I think they've been exposed to all sorts of levels of the organization. So I think they'll add tons of experience. Plus, it's also about some thoughts on what can organizations do to try to get better and improve as we go along. Because that's really, continuous improvement is really what it's all about. So we'll kind of go through some questions here for some, and if folks here have questions, if folks online have questions, kind of feel free to speak up. So we'll start with this one. So what strategies do you feel organizations use to support professional development and career growth for all employees? So whoever wants to go first, be my guest.
Well, hi, everyone. This is Katie Thiry. I want to start out as we engage in this conversation by thanking all of you for this opportunity, in particular, the opportunity I have here to partner with Charlie and Dr. Maja Zelihic, reconnecting in a professional setting like this. I've had the pleasure of working with both Dr. Zelihic and Minnick in various capacities over the years, and the countless lessons in that has been from observing both of their leadership styles under so many different organizational circumstances, as Charlie shared, with very diverse groups as well. I've had the opportunity to work with them directly or observing them from afar, I should say, which has been a great source of support to me as a leader. Neither one of them might realize the extent that they have been participants in my exploration of leadership. So thank you to you both. It's a pleasure to sit with you today. I might, if I can, Maja, jump into this very first question, perhaps most relevant to my own educational experience. My dissertation research was on peer rater accuracy and multi-rater feedback systems, which sounds like a mouthful, but in short, similar to Maya's research on perceptions, I, on the other hand, examine factors that influence perceptions of performance, specifically focusing on non-performance variables like gender, like relationship dynamics, and biases in formal performance rating processes. And so I share this background to frame it up to acknowledge here that I have an opportunity to share my personal lived experiences, but today's topic is directly relevant to a research question about relationship dynamics in the workplace. So I hope to introduce some research-based food for thought. Charlie, I think the key here is making sure that professional development is part of the organizational culture and accessible to everyone. And that's something that both of you as leaders have shaped for me in the workplace. And I'll take a breath and have Maja chime in too, but I want to talk about two things related to this topic, in particular, feedback and mentorship. And I would love to delve into both of those topics. Maja?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much again for the invite. And as Katie mentioned, it's such a pleasure seeing Charlie and seeing Katie again. And Charlie has been my rock for many, many, many years. And while we're not able to interact on a daily basis, I miss him daily. Same goes for Katie, even though we're trying to keep in touch. So this is a beautiful opportunity to collaborate again. So when it comes to the professional development, I think we all can agree that it is very much needed regardless of the industry, regardless of the profession. There is one thing that I think is being, many industries are facing it, regardless of the industry sector. We can speak on behalf of the educational industry at this point of time. There is a budget shortage left and right. So how do you inspire people? How do you motivate people? How do you get people to grow? And how do you get them exposed to some professional development opportunities if you're continuously having to worry about some budgeting constraints? Well, luckily, as we're going through many educational opportunities online, there's a lot of free opportunities when it comes to different exposures that our employees can have. through courses. For example, the institution I'm with, they have a great collaboration with Coursera. So a lot of our employees are able to actually get their education through those type of vehicles. Tuition reimbursement that is happening within many universities when it comes to their courses, their programs. We do have LinkedIn Learning. We do have opportunities to attend a lot of different webinars online. For example, this content that we're doing right now, you are recording it, and I would imagine you will share it. So this knowledge exchange and the opportunities to partake, participate, contribute, where the learning process is not just someone standing on a stage doing a lecture, but we're having these conversations. All these are valuable professional development opportunities. Then also to end this particular segment, there are those formal opportunities such as sending the employees and paying for the pursuit of a certificate, or perhaps sending them to a conference. No matter the online setting, nothing can replace that face-to-face interaction sometimes. Or engaging within your own communities, exactly what you're doing right now, enhancing the knowledge base within your own communities and giving opportunities for the members of the community to experience and interact with some professionals in different fields. So that is some of the things that we can talk about when we talk about professional development opportunities, regardless of the industry sector.
I so much agree with you, Maja, and there's a couple of things that you touched upon there, and that's budget and accessibility, right? So when we talk about cost being a factor, everyone's conscious of that, and regardless of the type of industry or organization, the reason the two things come to mind for me that align similar to what Maja is saying, feedback and mentorship, is because both of those things can be accessible and cost effective. So I would say, starting with feedback, this as a strategy, simple but not easy. I could focus on the what feedback does to support professional development and it being absolutely essential to organizational success. I'm starting with some of the obvious, right? Providing people with insight on how they're doing, ideas for improvement, creating open lines of communication. But listen to this. I think this is the key. When individuals receive feedback, it can make them feel supported in their roles. So how can we access something that's cost effective? And that's creating an organization that isn't afraid of feedback. Because unfortunately, what we see most is fear of both giving and receiving feedback. People don't want it because they fear, especially if it's critical, they fear that it's a personal judgment in their abilities. They might worry about being seen as incompetent or failing in their role. And people don't want to give it because it can be perceived as confrontational and people tend to avoid conflict. So I think it's one of the reasons that everyone dreads that annual performance review, that ineffective process that implies feedback is given once a year. The way that we give feedback, the way that it's delivered plays an extremely significant role. If it's vague, if it's poorly timed or harsh, if we wait until the end of the year, it doesn't create the positive effect it can have. And this is what I mean by it's simple, but it's not easy, because making feedback a regular and expected part of the work process and the culture of an organization is a place to start. How many of you have, there's a study in the 1920s that resonates with me. It's very simple. How many of you have heard of the Hawthorne effect? I know our researchers have, right? So Hawthorne effect, anybody familiar with it? So, well, I find this series of studies really fascinating. I think,
What?
am I getting an echo or am I getting a response?
I don't think anybody here has heard the Hawthorne. It's us crazy research people probably heard it, but.
Well, as folks who manage people, let me tell you what it's about. It was an investigation done on the impact of different physical working conditions that they had on employee productivity. And it was called the Hawthorne effect only because it was conducted at the Western Electric Hawthorne Works in Chicago. And part of the studies involved changes in lighting conditions of all things and the impact the lighting had on workers' productivity. The researchers initially increased the lighting to see if it would improve performance. But interestingly, they found that regardless of whether the lighting was increased or decreased, that productivity improved, simply because workers knew that they were being observed. So how does this relate to what I think of as professional development and how feedback can play a very cost-effective role in this? And that is, individuals tend to perform better when they're aware that they're being observed without changing anything else. It can make them feel valued. It can make them feel held accountable. And I think it's a really fascinating psychological aspect to human behavior, that workers might be motivated not just by environmental factors like lighting, but by the perception. And there's a word that Maja talked with her extensive research on perception, but the perception that their work is being noticed. So I think the study had perhaps unintentional impact on the field of organizational behavior, highlighting the importance of attention and feedback. And you've probably heard the phrase, what gets measured gets managed, often attributed to Peter Drucker. But it suggests that when you track or measure something, it becomes a focus and people are more likely to pay attention to it and improve upon it. And in the context of your organizations, it means that measuring performance, measuring productivity, or any other key metric, like maybe a specific behavior that we value, we can drive improvement just by paying attention to it, because it brings awareness and accountability to those areas. So that's one very cost-effective means of professional development. And the second strategy is mentoring, but we can get to that if there's interest in that topic.
I mean, I think feedback is critical, like you're talking, and I think you make a point about it. It needs to be ongoing, not just one time a year. I mean, too often we do these performance reviews once a year because somebody tells us we have to check this box. And then sometimes it's about one way. We sit down, we do it, we shake hands, we part ways. We'll do this when somebody else has to tell us that we have to do this again. So I think it really needs to be ongoing. And you can have these huddle sort of things or whatever it is. But yeah, the problem is sometimes feedback is seen as a surprise. It's like, man, I did not see that coming. Well, shame on the manager for that. I mean, shame on everybody for that. So I think and you're right, I think it's tough to ask for feedback because we're afraid what the answer might be. You're like, I don't want to, I think it's feedback. I think it's often what we need to hear, not always what we want to hear. So we need to hear this feedback. We don't always want to hear it, but I think we need to hear it and early and often, I think is. So I think that's a great way to, how do we do professional development, is people honest feedback and constructive, and it's about helping making the person better. I think it's not beating people up. It's about how do you make people better. And you're right too. I think people just need to know they matter in a long way. So you talk to them, you have goals, you have insights. I appreciate what you do, that sort of stuff. And it all drives that intrinsic stuff that Herzberg talks about, those motivators and all that kind of stuff. So absolutely agree that's important. So I don't mind any other, if not, I think we talk about mentorship a little bit. I think that's really important, especially when we look at in the work, mentorship for all involved, not just males. How do we do that for all? So if nothing else, I think mentorship would be a good one to dig into from across the board for everyone. How do we do that? So
yeah, just to piggyback on a few things you were talking about, we touched upon some of the research that I've done with Dr. Hamilton on perception. We all have a perception of our own selves, and we're trying to do the best we can to project what we want others to perceive. So hopefully, in lieu of that, we're coming to the workplace with the best intention, some of us, most of us, hopefully, to project whatever we want others to perceive, and for that to be quite good. So as you're talking about closing the feedback loop, sometimes there is a complete disconnect between what I perceive I'm doing and what others perceive I'm doing. And that's especially important for leaders. In the past, and Katie and Charlie, they know this. My passion sometimes translates into being intense. And sometimes intensity, we talked a little bit about gender, and we talked about women and male leaders. Assertiveness and intensity is a lot of times with male leadership perceived as a strength, a strong leader. When it comes to women leaders, sometimes that whole passion / intensity may be perceived as one being a bit bossy, a micromanager, and so forth. Therefore, we also have to be mindful of how we communicate when it comes to feedback, and also how we're perceived. So back to your point, Charlie, I think at the end of the day, no one wants to hear they're doing a bad job. So that may not be the best approach as you're discussing someone's performance. But highlighting some of the positive aspects, dig for it if you cannot find it on the surface level, and then also outlining some of the opportunities. And feedback should never be a surprise. So you touched upon the concept of mentorship. It is very important, but it has to be organic, not forced. Clinging to someone as be my mentor may not always be the best approach in a professional setting. Sometimes companies have a very formal mentorship program. I'm actually in favor of those, because sometimes those organic connections are not made. And a lot of times, first you establish a relationship, and then you actually evolve into some sort of a mentorship mentee type of experience, regardless of your standing within your current profession. You can be the executive leader, still seeking some guidance, some advice, and ultimately that person may become your mentor. And your mentor may be the best positioned person to provide you with some feedback, at times a little bit of a tough feedback, and letting you know that some of the areas of your opportunities. I like to ask my team a lot as to, let me know where my blind spots are. Let me know what I'm missing, because yet again, I am mindful of the fact that the way I communicate and some opportunities I have, some of the good things that I have going on, but also some things that I can improve upon.
There was something that, tying what you're saying, Maja, as you mentioned, professional development opportunities and the types of things that fall into that category. And the reason that feedback comes to mind for me, Charlie mentioned that we can focus on those areas that we, quote, need to, right, focus on. And that's why I think feedback is so important, because especially constructive feedback, because it gives us that guidepost in terms of those professional development opportunities that we can solicit and select. And I completely agree with you. Some of the most of the companies that I've worked with who had the strongest teams and the most effective leaders also had the most successful succession planning process, which included formal or informal mentorship programs like Maja talked about. It's also, it can be extremely cost effective as well. It can be as simple as Maja said, organically, individuals pairing with one another, or as simple as the organization creating those pairing opportunities with others within the organization, including leaders at different levels. It has so many wonderful benefits, including creating community, building those internal relationships. It allows people to get a clear understanding of what career paths look like and how they could grow within the organization. I've had the opportunity to develop mentoring programs in a corporate setting and in my current capacity in higher education. And I'll just say it just works. But don't take our word for it. There are so many studies that are published on mentorship, personnel psychology, the Journal of Applied Psychology, the American Society for Training and Development. Research shows that mentoring programs are a really highly effective strategy. And I think one of the reasons that it works so well, as Maja touched on, is in that cultivated relationship, there's that feedback loop piece, right? Where you've cultivated a relationship, that it's a safe space for those feedback conversations.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the whole honest, just honest feedback sort of stuff. I think about people who I've worked with and been good mentors, and they just shoot straight with me. It's the old no sunshine. You don't blow sunshine on my tailpipe, I have to blow up yours. You know, we're open, we're honest, we can talk about whatever. And also I think part of it is when we have some of those personal conversations, it doesn't become public fodder, so to speak. It kind of stays with you and your mentor, and you're helping grow and developing you. And you check in on people and you build those really quality relationships that can last for many years. So I think that's critical. I think we all get where we are because people believe in us and give us chances along the way. And they can be our manager, they can be a coworker, all kinds of people. So relationships matter, I think. So I think that's important. Mentorship and feedback certainly go hand in hand. So let's move on to, go ahead.
Before we move on, Charlie, before we move on, I would like to embarrass you a little bit in front of those, the esteemed audience members. Anyone that knows Charlie in a professional setting, all the settings that we were in, Charlie was the top mentor for so many. He was that person that people would get guidance and advice from, and he was the person that was such an inspiring and guiding force, and he never met anyone as a result of that encounter that person was better. So I'm sure you guys know this in the audience, but I just want to reiterate this real quick because it's very important.
You're too kind. I think I've just worked with some really cool people, and two of them are here with Katie and Maja. So I think it's just, it's the reason you come back. I always ask people if they've been there a long time, what keeps you coming back? It's those relationships you have with people, and sometimes the reason people leave, I think in some way because it's missing. So I'm just fortunate to have really good people in my life like these two. So well, let's move on to the next. Let's talk about early experiences. So how might early experiences that we have shape individual leadership styles and workplace interactions? It can be, early in our career, early as we move into a company, all that kind of stuff. So how does early experiences help to shape us? Yeah, whoever wants to go first.
Do you want to get us started, Katie? And
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You can start.
I can talk about this forever, so go ahead, Katie.
Go ahead.
I certainly can. I'm not limited for word count. Sorry, everybody. But Charlie, I think this is a wonderfully worded question. How might individual experiences shape leadership styles in workplace interact? Is that what it was? In workplace interactions?
Yep.
I repeat it because there are so many lessons in individual reflections on this question, even more than what I could say in response. But here's why. I think our personal and professional experiences, whether it be in education, whether it be previous professional roles, early professional influences, role models like we've been talking about, family dynamics, sibling hierarchy, the alignment of the constellations, if that's your thing. I'm a Leo, I'm a firstborn girl, if it wasn't already obvious. I think our experiences significantly influence our lens. I think it significantly influences our view of the world. And so, of course, our experiences shape our leadership styles and how we interact with others. So I think this is an important for everyone, not just leaders, to recognize how our background shapes perspectives, and most important, to be open to adapting approaches or exploring our own understanding of others. And that's where the power is, I think. Reflect. Why might I come to the conclusions that I do? How do my values shape my approach? And how might those values come into conflict with others without suggesting that one is right and the other is wrong? And in a moment of vulnerability, I'll share that I'm a first generation college grad from teenage parents who are still together, but started a business and valued hard work as a means of survival. So being raised by a blue collar, self-employed parents, I promise you, survival instincts are fueled by nothing other than hard work. So for me, how this translates in the workplace, I see how it shows up and how it veils in my interactions. What I respect and value in others is a work ethic over all else. And Charlie and Maya know this about me. And I have to remind myself that my top values, which are shaped by my own lived experiences, when what was rewarded in my early years aren't shared by everyone. So my top values are my own. And so I think having that self-awareness piece and understanding our own values and how this shows up and how we perhaps judge the workplace around us, how we perceive others in workplace environments, I think is why this question is so important. The question in itself, asking the question in itself, Charlie, I think is more important than any one individual can answer. So there's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
No, I think, yeah, that's true, I think, and I'm probably guilty of that. Sometimes I have, because there's nobody harder than me. So sometimes I have that same expectation of everybody around me, and they're like, oh, you know, and it's mine, it's not everybody else. That's why we talk about leadership and this stuff with soft skills. I think that's a terrible word. I think they're more complex skills. There's nothing soft about dealing with all these type of things, feedback and human dynamics, and we'll talk about conflict later and emotional intelligence. There's something soft about that. It's really, really complex and it's hard. It's hard. So I think that's the tough part about this. But I think about too all the reflecting stuff. So I think a lot about where have I been, where am I at, where am I heading. So and it's different for me because I'm probably entering the fourth quarter at this point of my life, but when I was in the first, yeah, I'm way past halftime, brother. So how do we get into that? So it's a little different at that point, but
Yeah.
so I think that reflection piece, it's really critical about where am I been, where am I at, where am I heading, and all those type of things. So Maja, how about you? Any thoughts on the topic?
I can talk about this for hours, but I'll spare you and the audience members. I won't do that. I've done a lot of research pertaining to how what's actually impacting us as far as who we are in every single setting, professional setting, personal setting. And when we were doing a lot of things pertaining to the research on perception and the way we interact with others, there's so many things at play. Your culture, your life experiences, your spirituality, the way you perceive life in general, and a lot of things that you were taught early on, your curiosity, your intelligence, and then your emotional intelligence. And I always say that all these things combined, we bring them to the table at a workplace. I love when people say, oh, just kind of leave your personal life at home, or it's just business, it's not personal. I corrected every single leader that I've worked with or worked for when they've used that sentence. Can we not use that sentence ever again? It is always personal. We perceive reality as a very deeply personal sensation. Regardless of the fact that we are in a professional setting. Why are we saying this? Yes, we still have to act. This is a business. This is a job. Absolutely. However, as you're giving feedback, as you're providing feedback, as you're interacting, as you're meeting deadlines, you will have to be mindful that individuals will perceive things differently. One's emotional intelligence is going to have a higher impact on the way they react to things than one's intelligence at times. Also, the upbringing experiences. Katie touched upon a few things. I started doing research because a colleague of mine, we were in the same meeting, we heard the same message. We walked out of this meeting with one of us having the impression we're being fired, and the other one getting impression we're being promoted. What had happened was two women, let's just say fairly intelligent, we can argue that, but fairly intelligent, with a vastly different life experiences and upbringing, walked away hearing the same message so vastly different. So what was at stake? Our experiences in life, the way we perceived reality, things that had happened to us in the past, and then ultimately that actually impacted the way we heard the message. So for leaders, future leaders, current leaders, aspiring leaders, why that matters. Your message has to be concise. You always have to be on point. You sometimes have to rehearse what you're trying to communicate, and you have to understand that you have to adjust your messages sometimes depending upon who you're talking to. Some of your employees need to have a lot of hand holding, a lot of reinforcement, a lot of telling them they're doing a great job. Some of your employees need you to leave them alone. Tell them if something's wrong, as long as they're meeting deadlines, reaching all the objectives. So you have to be that leader to recognize those differences and making sure that you are adaptable. That doesn't mean that you're going to be a different person every single time, but your interactions will have to be different. As I worked, just this example, I work with Charlie, I work with Katie. Our interactions were sometimes different because of the fact that as a leader, you do have to understand the way the communication works. It's a two-way street. And again, it is always going to be a little bit personal. So keep that in mind. It's not always going to be all business. And Katie and I had a lovely debates on that particular topic. And yet again, just being mindful of differences that we have as human beings, as employees, and understanding that we have to be laser focused on our goals and our objectives, things that we're trying to do and making a difference. But at the same point of time, being mindful and understanding that we all bring different baggage, and we have to find the space somehow to understand that.
Yeah, I found over the years, I mean, the best part about organizations is that we're all different. The most challenging part is that we're all different. So how do we manage all those differences to
Make them
to make it worth it?
to make them strengths.
Yeah, to make them strengths. Yes, I think that's,
Yeah.
how do we manage it? How do we do all that stuff? And it's, again, goes back to these economic skills. There's nothing soft about that, but you have to get, and part of it is, I think it's about relationships. You have to get to know your people. Like, and as you said, you have to manage people different based on personalities and who they are, how they communicate. Everybody, one size is not fit all. That's what gets people into trouble sometimes. They tried this and it didn't work. That's because you didn't know your audience. So you tried the same thing for everybody. Then you wonder why all chaos broke loose because you didn't effectively deliver your message. So I think that's really important. I think so.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Knowing your audience concept, Katie and I share one common theme. We were 115 years ago, as young as we are, we were in a corporate training capacity, and being mindful of, is your audience with you? We know individuals' attention span. We also know that everyone can retain as much as they can retain. And I remember a fellow corporate trainer many years ago. She was so laser focused on covering the content. And I came to her and I said, they need a break. No, I still have this content. I said, they're falling asleep. So your audience right now, you're not mindful of the fact that your audience is no longer with you. Any type of a setting, even a personal setting, as you're talking to a significant other, knowing your audience, knowing what I always tease and I say with my husband, for some weird reason, I'm overanalyzing. I'm sending him to buy something. I'm giving him 17 explanations as to why I want this product versus that one. And he just looks at me as like, I don't care. I really don't care. Just tell me what you want. With that said, knowing your audience, I'm still working on that. But that's also in a corporate setting, knowing your audience and knowing what matters to them, what's also important to them, what motivates them. That's very important.
Yeah.
What a perfect segue to check in with our audience right now and to see what's resonating out there. I thought I heard apologies. There's an echo in that room for me anyway. So apologies if we were speaking over anyone. Was there something that was said that we might have missed, or can we take a pause to see how the conversation's resonating with folks out there?
I too thought that Tricia was about to say something. Was that true? No?
No, I guess not, but I think it's, to Maya's point, I think what somebody told me a long time ago, the mind can only absorb as much as the tail end can endure. So, once people have sat a long time, they enough's enough, as long as, people have to, you can only take so much that people have to move on. So let's talk a little bit about
Charlie, before we do, Charlie,
Sure.
Could I just share an anecdote that hopefully will resonate with any of you as much as it did for me. So I'd like to just, on this topic, as we talk about personal experiences, shaping our lens and shaping our expectations of others, and how we show up in the world and how people show up for us, I think is really important. I had this opportunity. So here's the scenario and here's what happened. And it was so meaningful to me. Gosh, probably more than 20 years ago. I had a coach and I was communicating a workplace scenario to this professional coach, and she listened and then said to me, and here's the I didn't get it at the time. It took me years to get it. So I'll tell you what she said. She listened and then said, but what if that's not true? And then that's all she said, and then pause, long dramatic pause. But what if that's not true? And I thought, maybe she doesn't understand what I'm saying. I'm going to retell my story. I'm going to say it in a different way. I'm going to give her the facts again. And I don't think she understands. So I restated the scenario that I was dealing with. And she said again, but what if that's not true? And I thought, does she think that I'm making this up? It is true. These are facts. This is happening. What do you mean? What if it's not true? And so in the moment, caught up in the dynamics of the scenario, I didn't understand the question. I didn't understand the question. I took it, right? So literally years later, reflecting on how I show up in the world, reflecting on my professional experiences and my expectations of others and what I think people expect of me. There's the question that comes up. But what if that's not true? And it doesn't mean that it's not for you where you sit, but what if it's not? And so this might not resonate for any of you like it did for me where I was sitting, but I find myself reflecting on that question when I'm in challenging or complex scenarios and navigating my understanding of the dynamic, and just asking the question to see what comes up. But what if that's not true? Does that make sense? I mean, it resonated with me because of the scenario, but it's helped me years later, and I wish I could find her again to say, I finally got it. Maybe 15 years later, I understood what you were saying. You were not saying my experience wasn't true, but helping me reframe what was happening in the environment for me so that I could perhaps make a different choice. Anyways, thanks for letting me share that.
Well, I want to share something, Katie. There's so much research, and we're not going to go into politics. So everyone, do not buckle up. We're not going there. What we're trying to do is this. As we have an opinion, we start feeling strong about our opinions. And what we're looking for, sometimes subconsciously, we're looking for folks to validate what we think. And that is a human nature. And anyone raising their hand saying, oh, I'm not doing this. Yes, we all are. We all are. Because we formed that opinion. We read something, we watched something, we think we know something, or we know enough to be dangerous, right? So as I'm seeking folks to validate my opinion, I'm usually not proactively seeking those that are going to tell me that it's not true. So what if it's not true is a higher level of emotional intelligence. And embracing it in a work setting really helps you see another perspective. So as a leader, I try, and I say I try because everyone is a work in progress. I try to solicit feedback saying, what are your thoughts? Because that is not, I'm not usually framing it as what if that's not true, because Katie, without knowing that story, my new teammates think I'm weird. But what are your thoughts? Because genuinely, as we're all learning, maybe what I'm thinking is not accurate. So create that space for individuals to be very open, to give you that feedback and let you know as to how whatever you're doing, whatever you're saying makes them feel. And what if it's not true? What I'm thinking, it may not be, but I have all this evidence, because remember, I was proactively seeking to validate what I'm thinking. Well, let's talk to those folks that may tell you this may not work in a work setting because of these things, or we've tried this and this is why it didn't work. And maybe sometimes you need to change the variables and it's going to work, or maybe sometimes you're really going down the rabbit hole and you should be going there because what you're thinking is not true.
Yeah, that's a great question. I never thought that's a great question. What if that's not true? So that's a great thing to think about. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about just for a little bit, about individual employees, people like we call individual contributors, whatever. So what things can individual employees do to foster a more respectful and collaborative workplace for all? We talked some about managers, supervisors. So what can folks at the ground level, kind of individual contributors, what can they do to help with this respectful and collaborative workplace?
I'm really curious to see if those of you can imagine what I'm going to say. I feel like I'm saying the same thing to every question. So this is the audience participation portion. What do you think that I might say in response to this?
I mean,
okay, feedback loop. It all comes down to feedback. I think really, and once again, so I'm going to say feedback loop, asking for constructive feedback, offering the same in return. I think I can't emphasize enough how important everyone individually has the opportunity to create an open, respectful, work environment. And again, Charlie, I love the wording of your questions because once again, I'd like to point out what can employees do, right? So what the individuals do, because I often ask a similar question like this, or hear the question posed to leaders as if culture is only top down, but workspaces are created by absolutely everyone in it. And so love the phrasing of the question, the wording of the question, because I think it really looks at the individual contribution of creating a collaborative workspace. Of course, leaders obviously need to value a respectful, collaborative workplace and lead by example, of course. But I love the nature of this question, which really emphasizes the individuals, everyone's place.
So I'll start, but if someone in the audience wants to take over, feel free. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but coming to any sort of a task, any sort of a life's project is having an open mind, and really believing that people have good intentions until they prove you otherwise. So what the individual contributors can do is, as they're engaging in any work, if they're new at the job, if they spend several years, gaining understanding for a particular task, understanding a project. A lot of times folks fail at the project because they were either not properly trained or they're lacking understanding. And they feel that, oh, I've been here for 3 years. If I ask a question, it'll be perceived as if I'm incompetent. It's a sign of weakness. So gaining understanding for a particular project, understanding what's being asked from them, and also having trust in their leaders that particular project is not busy work. How many times we hear this? Oh, now we have to do this, it's just a busy work. Understand the why behind anything you're doing at work. Gain understanding, get feedback, as Katie was saying, and also pursue those professional development opportunities, those training opportunities that may be offered to you. To brush up on your skills. A lot of folks are saying, oh, I'm still not good at Excel. Well, with all the tools we have out there, everyone should be at least semi-functional with it and so forth. A lot of new technology, I'm not talking Excel, I'm talking new technology as well. AI is here to stay, we have to use it. So you have to understand how to use it, how to utilize it, and help others do so. So individual contributors, what they can do is, yet again, come with an open mind, assume that everyone's intentions are good, and also understand and be mindful of those things that we were talking about. A person will have a bad day. A person will bring their personal baggage to work. And just the other day, I had someone ask me if I'm doing okay. I wasn't maybe not as intense or as passionate in one of the meetings. And I appreciated that question. And some people may not, because you have to know the person. If you send that message to a person that may not appreciate that question, they may get defensive. Well, what do you mean? What was I doing in a meeting? I haven't said anything. So you have to know the audience. You have to know. You have to get to know the people you work with. You have to make a conscientious effort to really get to know your team players. I think, Charlie, you mentioned that as well. One size does not fit all, for sure. And individual contributors have to bring their best effort, have to gain and proactively seek understanding if there's something they don't understand. Going back to Katie's point, make sure to get plenty of feedback, have an open mind, have an understanding for the why behind every single action that we do, and also provide feedback. I think this is a not necessarily using the verbiage waste of time. Businesses don't want you to come and say, oh, this is a waste of time. Explain why you think something can be a bit more streamlined, a bit more efficient, and give them some specific suggestions. Also be prepared, because you're the one that raised your hand, be prepared to maybe lead the project to change the process a little bit. So those are some of the things and many others that individual contributors can do.
I've found out too, sometimes you talk about the relationship thing. If you talk to people and go, you know what, I've noticed you're really good at this. I'd love to sit and pick your brain. How can I become better at that? I mean, acknowledge what somebody's good at and go, you know what, I've noticed you're really good at whatever it might be. You're really good at, solving problems or communicating with people. And so I'd love to pick your brain and figure out how I might become more like that, how I might enhance that skill myself. Sometimes just reach out to people, just making those human connections. You're really good at this. I would love to be better at that. Can I pick your brain and see what you can do to help me be better at that? So, and maybe there's something that you can share with them. So part of it's that human connection stuff and getting to know people outside of name, rank, and serial number.
Yeah, and everyone is an expert in certain areas, and get them to help you, and also speaking to all of us have certain things we're really passionate and really good at. Sometimes as leaders, it is wonderful to try to assign tasks based on one's passion and what motivates them. Sure, sometimes that's not a business reality, so they definitely have to seek expertise of some other peers that may be a little bit better at certain skills. Brush up on those skills that are part of the job requirement, because if you look at the 100% of things that we do, I would say 70% or something we may have passion for, maybe 30% we're incredibly passionate about, but then there's like a few percentage points, hopefully not too much, because otherwise you need to look for another job, where you're saying, those are not the tasks that I really enjoy, but I'll have to do them as part of the job. So that's kind of and it's not always possible. And I know that's not your question, but it's fresh in my mind. It's not always possible just to assign tasks when it comes to someone's passion or someone's preference. That's not a business reality either. So be mindful of that too.
Yeah, I think those are all just great points about, and again, it's about connections. It's one thing I know with Maja and Katie both. If I ask them an opinion or something, they're going to tell me their truth. They're not going to code it. They're not going to tell me some sort of fluff sort of deal. They're going to tell me what they really think and what's going on and what's their perception of this kind of stuff. So that's important for me as well, to have those people you can reach out that are just going to shoot straight with you. They're not going to kid you. They're not going to BS you. They're going to just tell you shoot straight with you, which is what I think we all need.
That mutual trust is just invaluable.
Yeah, what was that, sir?
Mutual trust.
Chuck, mutual trust is invaluable. I think it's a great book. If you ever read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, it talks about the first dysfunction of a team is absence of trust. Because if you don't trust, you're not going to have debate about things that matter. You're not going to hold people accountable, all those type of things. So I think that's and part of it is, that's very important, because part of it is, I'll reach out to them because I trust them to shoot straight with me. I think that's part of it. I just trust them and they're going to shoot straight with me. So it becomes a mutually trusting relationship, I think. And also that, again, what you talk about is confidential, doesn't become public fodder, that kind of stuff. That's the other thing too. It's like, we have to be careful about that. So, so we got just a couple minutes. So I don't know, Maja and Katie, if you have any parting shots or any main takeaways or things that people need to think about, if we go back to the title of our presentation is, how do we develop a respectful, collaborative workplace for everyone? If there's any parting thoughts or ideas that you want to share in the last 3-4 minutes, be great.
Well, for me, I think one of the questions really hit on it, and that's self-awareness, starting with reflection and soliciting feedback. So, of course, I'll have to say feedback a few more times as we wrap up. but I'm a huge fan of 360-degree feedback systems, aka multi-rater feedback. Feedback from peers, colleagues, internal or external business partners, not just managers, can be really, really valuable. And so the reason I say that is my summary of breaking barriers is to be that proactive individual. And I don't just say that as someone who has researched multi-rater feedback, but it's been a valuable tool for me individually, professionally. It's been a valuable tool, not only in understanding how others might perceive my actions, but also how they might need me to show up for them differently. So my response is a summary is anyone who's listening to the sound of our voices, I would encourage all of you to explore opportunities for engaging in something like a 360-degree feedback system to kind of support those kinds of conversations among peers, among colleagues, among managers, and so forth. So there's my thought.
And I love what we just said about, and is how can I best show up for you? I mean, that's critical. How can I best show up for you? How can I best support you? Because it's different. I think it's amazing what feedback give us, what they give to us, if we give them the avenue to do that. And that's a great question. How can I best show up for you? And I think and it's a two-way street. How can an employee best show up for their manager, and how the manager best show up for the employee? What's that look like? And I think we can get on that same common language place, that is helpful. So that's a good point. So Maya, how about you?
So as I'm doing this, I'm plugging in my laptop. I guess it's almost ready to shut down. So I'm sorry about that. I would say, like, I would like to piggyback on something that one of the audience members mentioned, which is the concept of building trust. You can spend years building trust, and sadly, some of your actions may cause you to lose it overnight in a professional setting, in a personal setting. So when it comes to the professional setting that we're discussing here, is empowering and supporting your workforce, empowering and supporting your peers. You don't have to be a formal leader to create that environment of trust and collaboration. Making sure you collaborate, getting feedback, whether it's a formalized 360 or if it's even informal feedback, soliciting feedback, and also be ready to hear some tough feedback, some tough love, and being able to reflect and see what you can do. And as opposed to, if you're asking me for something, if I give you that particular feedback, at that point of time, if this turns into some sort of a back and forth argument, that defies the purpose of a feedback exchange. So sometimes it's a peer-to-peer feedback, which may be a little bit more open and honest, because every time you're soliciting feedback from folks that report to you, do keep in mind that you are, as far as the power dynamic, you may not necessarily hear the most honest feedback on your day-to-day performance. So as you're building trust not through your words as much as through your actions. Making sure that you are creating an environment where people that are doing the right thing, that are doing everything they need to do pertaining to their job tasks, have a very supportive leader and a good nurturing environment in order for them to thrive and grow and have those professional development and mentoring opportunities in order to be able to get to their next, as far as improving their current standing within their current career path or changing careers and so forth. So those would be some of my parting words.
Yeah, I think it's just an ongoing. Yeah, trust is really important. I always tell when I meet with students, trust is like a grade point average. It's tough to build but easy to kill. So it takes time and effort. So that's something with trust, but it's absolutely critical, I think. So I appreciate you both. My world is better because of both of you. So I appreciate your input and insight and thoughts, and just on a day-to-day basis. So I know everybody's busy, so we appreciate your, look at there's some advanced team skills. Wow.
Showcasing all I know, Charlie.
That's awesome. So I appreciate you both, and thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your week, especially in Florida where it's warmer than it is in the Midwest.
Thank you very much,
right.
all of you. Greetings to all the audience members. Thank you for your attention, and thank you, Charlie, for having us, and thank you, Katie. It was a pleasure sharing this panel with you.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. All right.